no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go.
Double up.
Champion.
STAKK Nation, welcome back to the channel. It's an interesting one today.
Oh snap!
You know, I want to talk about the fourth turning. Okay.
Ooh-wee.
You see, we're in an interesting position because, to be straightforward, there's a bunch of things going on around the world right now, and for some reason, there's not as much coverage on it as other things, right?
In the U.S. national media, right?
In the U.S. national media, that's and you could look at it different ways. Some people could say that it's because it does not support the narrative, right? Or it could just be that maybe there's not enough time to report all of this news, right? Depending on what is going on in your own country. And at the
Maybe
same
it's not
time, some
intriguing
people,
enough, right? It's not
yeah, maybe it's
intriguing
not
enough.
intriguing enough, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe you don't want your people to be inspired, right? To go to a next level. Anyway, there is a book called The Fourth Turning, and this is by a gentleman
William
by the name of William Strauss, right? I think it's William Strauss
Strauss
and
and
Neil Howe, right?
Howe.
Amazing book, 100% recommended. I think it's interesting when you read that book and you see what is happening currently. So the whole idea behind this book is that there are these cycles, about 80 to 100-year time period, right, where you have these cycles where the mood of society changes. So you have this 80 to 100-year period where there is a dramatic shift in the mood, and we could attribute that mood to various different things, which we're going to discuss here. And when that mood shifts, it generally lasts for about 20-ish years or so, right? Then you start having another phase starting to build up. Now, this whole cycle has around 4 phases in it. I mean, fourth turning, and then it repeats itself, hence fourth turning. And usually the highest point of that cycle is going to be it's an upbeat mode, right? Things are going well, society trusts institutions, right? And they think that the economy is doing pretty well, people feel wealthier, all of that good stuff, right? But in this process, right, things start to change direction, and then this leads to an awakening, which is now the second phase of that situation. And in this awakening, people start questioning people start questioning things. They're not happy with the status quo, they're not happy with where they find themselves now. And if this goes on, well, this will go on for a while, as history has shown. And then we now get into this unraveling stage, right, where there is no trust in institutions, right? And people are heading more towards individualism, looking for the truth by themselves, right? Trying to search for the truth and align themselves on the right side of history, at least for their life, if you want to put it that way. And when you talk about individualism, there's some things that can enable a higher level of individualism, right? Which we'll get into it as well. And then, of course, you now get to this point where you run into a crisis. This is the breaking of the camel's back, right? And during this crisis, you will now have, potentially a revolution. Governments will lose power. Some governments will lose power, and the old power is destroyed. Then rises a new order, which brings us back to the high, and the cycle begins again. Right.
Yep.
If you look at some of the, yeah, go ahead.
Can I add to that a little bit? So we've seen that empire after empire.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes 200 years, 250 years or so for the cycle. There's also now data that shows that it also reflects economic cycles as well.
Yes.
As well, it also all now points back to resource, right? Resource grabs. While everybody feels rich, then eventually all the money gravitates to just towards one group of people that control everything. And people are like, wait a second, what's going on here? And then people just start getting enlightened and start, oh, they've been feeding us the wrong information this whole time. And then you start this revolution. And then things get better for a little bit, and then boom. So it's just a cycle that repeats itself.
It's a cycle. It's like a pendulum, right? And I think when a pendulum ever swings too far to one side, it will always kind of come back down to a middle, except we're talking about a pendulum that is moving in super slow motion, right?
Yeah.
That's why you can have this period where things are kind of aligned again, and at least there's prosperity. Now, if you look at the if you look at the characteristics of what, or at least some of the ingredients, right, of the crisis phase of this cycle we're talking about, you will see that there is things like currency debasement, inflation, protests, lacking trust of government, media control. And this kind of goes under the control
Yeah.
part, right? Governments
Control of
start
people,
leaning more towards more
data.
tyranny, right?
Yep.
Spying on the people, trying to
Yep.
exert more force and control upon the
Control.
people. But at this point in time, all of this is only coming across as oppression. So people are going to revolt. Now, let's take a look at where we are in the world currently. And the question here is, are we experiencing this? And are we in this phase of this fourth turning situation, right?
Yeah.
So if we look
By the
around the
way,
world, yes, go
by the way,
ahead.
this here is one of the variables. One of the
Right.
things that you look at when you look at the Ford turning. Just wanted to mention that real quick. That's a
Absolutely.
lot.
So we're looking at just inflation right now because this is one of the
Yep.
main things that are happening in the world right now as well. We can
Yep.
see Zimbabwe, Turkey, Sri Lanka, Venezuela, Lebanon, Cuba, Laos, Argentina, and the list goes on and on. Right? All of these countries are experiencing a ridiculous amount of inflation. And we can see that in some of these countries, there is protests. Obviously, there's already no trust in the government. The
Can you
interesting thing about
you want to allow me to give me a second to quickly explain what inflation is, so that the people really understand how bad this is?
sure, I mean, go ahead.
Just imagine you put a dollar
Mhm.
in the bank in Zimbabwe, right? And
Right,
then by June of this year, you wake up, that dollar is not even there anymore. You actually own money now because at 472%, your entire dollar is wiped out. Now you own the bank $4.72. You've been wiped out. That's basically what's
absolutely,
going on. The value of a dollar has just been poofed, disappeared,
exactly.
gone.
So the values disappeared, and as a result, the people are frustrated, right? And so
Yeah.
they go out and they start protesting and all of this good stuff. Now, currently, we know that, and we're going to go through some stuff here, which is currently happening. And one interesting question that is, which we would ask through all of this, is like, why is that this is happening? And it seems like there's not enough coverage on it, right? With all the chaos that's going on around the world right now. We will start with Sri Lanka, and we also know this is happening in the Philippines, Pakistan, which is also on that list, as well as Sri Lanka, Ecuador, Peru, Argentina, Mozambique, and we know recently Ghana as well has been seeing protests over the extreme rising cost of living, right? So, and we're just gonna let's just peruse through Twitter on this one. We can see here Sri Lankan Prime Minister offers a resignation after protesters storm the presidential residence. Right. I would imagine that this would be something that would be on the news, wouldn't it?
This all weekend since Friday has been buzzing all over the place with what's going on at Sri Lanka, and Bloomberg is not talking about it. I've
Hmm.
not seen any of the major news pick it up.
That's you would think you'd at least be on CNN. You know, I mean, I look when there was a crisis recently in Ukraine, and we did not hear the end of it forever. Right, it's still a horrible thing that is happening, but we did not hear the end of it.
Actually, as a matter of fact, that's all they're focusing on right now.
Yeah, and so it would make me wonder why is it that this is not getting coverage, just like uh, Ukraine did. We can see that even some of the members within government. So former Sri Lankan president and chairman of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, I'm not going to try to pronounce any of the names, said to the president, right, that he has no moral right to remain in power and warned that a very dangerous situation will arise if they do not quit immediately. This is when you know the people have had it, man. And as you can see, he's down and the people have just taken over the whole situation. And it's unfortunate that we have to come to this level of destruction for people
Before you,
to be more compassionate towards others. Go ahead.
before you leave that page, there was that sign that says "Give us our money back." That I thought was quite interesting, right?
Mm,
Give us our stolen money back. Here's the reality: they printed the money, they gave it to you. Actually, as a matter of fact, they gave it to their friends. You only got a few pennies of it. It was
yeah.
never really your money. As a matter of fact, the money that you work for, it's not your money because they've decided that they can tax it anytime, they can seize it anytime, and I said, well, it's not your money. So people need to come to the realization that as long as we're in the fiat system, our money is not our money; it's their money. They just choose or allow us to spend it, and they can decide when to inflate, which is what's going on now, or deflate it, which is one of the reasons why we keep pushing Bitcoin. That because you want that, you want to remove that external factor that controls the value of
Yeah.
your money.
Well, this is a very unique situation, and I think there's a unique solution at hand.
Yeah,
It's just a matter of seeing how we can get people to jump on it. We can also see here in Ghana, hundreds gather in protest of surging inflation. Again, this is another situation which is not being covered anywhere. We can see that the police are really attacking the people, right? Throwing what is it? Well, smoke bombs into the
yeah, tear
crowds and things
gas.
like that.
Yeah,
Which makes me wonder if you're an officer and you're out here fighting against these people, you have to ask yourself: is the inflation not affecting you as well?
that's what I don't get when I see these police and military
Right?
people out there on the
Yeah.
streets fighting
So
their fighting the civilians, not
yeah,
coming to the reality that it's also costing you and your family's expenses.
exactly. So fighting to protect the money of the wealthy. Protests over economic woes enter second day in Ghana. Right. Obviously, the people are absolutely frustrated. We're already dealing with a place where conditions have been tough for a very long time. Right. And now we're dealing with this. And the other piece of this is also that we know that we're looking at a younger generation. One of those moods, when we talk about the mood changing in the fourth turning, part of that is the fact that we're being led by people who are from a completely different era. Their mindset and their priorities are not the same as our current generation, right? And it's been the same people forever. So how do you expect a change when we're still being led by people from a very medieval time, still trying to impose or enforce this I guess this methods of business that does not work?
So the
Technology is
methods
here.
exactly.
Yeah, let me just finish this here. So I would
Yeah.
say technology is here, and that has exposed the whole world to what a better life can be. So when people know exactly how much more they can get, I don't think you can shortchange them anymore. And I think
Yeah.
this is has served as a catalyst. Go ahead.
Yeah. And that the mindset that you're talking about is this whole centralized approach where you want to centrally control the population, the central banks. Take a bunch of loans from the IMF and the World Bank,
Yeah,
but then do not use the money for what you're supposed to use the money for. And
yeah,
then here comes the external factors with the inflation, the value of the dollar is going up because everybody have taken money from the dollar or taken loans from these world organizations, and now the cost of their loans have gotten more expensive, which then causes inflation in their country because your currency is not dependent on your production, it's dependent on external factors.
right.
And that is what's going on here in Ghana. So if you don't have your own, I don't even want to promote the idea of them having their own centrally controlled currency. The goal
Right.
is for you to be able to actually store the value of your money by itself without necessarily having external influences on that money. And that's what's going on in Ghana.
Absolutely. Well, we'll move right on then to the Dutch farmers, right? We see that the Dutch have also been dealing with the same thing. High levels of inflation,
Oh,
right?
in the Dutch case, it's even worse. They have high
Right.
level of inflation, but then you have a central government that is telling you when to plant your seeds, what kind of seeds you can plant. You can no longer plant. They're trying to literally track your carbon footprint on the kind of food that you eat. All that kind of World Economic Forum talk about control of. And this is the same time when we have very low count of wheat and grains available to the rest of the world. We're talking about global farming here. And then
Right.
you have a government now that is trying to tell you what to produce, when to produce. Oh, you cannot have X amount of cow. They're going to start
Mm.
taxing your cow because of the carbon footprint on your cows. These guys just flipped. They're like, wait a second, what the hell is going on? So again, that old decentralized mindset, centralized mindset.
Yeah. Well, that is what all of that stuff is tyrannical, which is what is
Yeah.
spoken about in that fourth turning.
Yeah.
Governments trying to exert more power on the people, trying to
Yeah.
control the people even more. And these are the exact things that cause people to,
You,
lose it and go over
you,
the edge.
You know what's worse about that now? They're
Why is
actually
that?
shooting them. These are peaceful protesters, kind of like what happened in Canada. But this
Yeah.
time around, the police are shooting people, and it goes back to the old
Hang on,
gun.
hang on, hang on. They're shooting. Wait,
Yeah,
they're shooting people in.
they're shooting the farmers now.
Isn't that a gun-free country?
Actually, Netherlands actually have major amount of gun owners. So
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure they want to start
Isn't-
trouble.
I think they have some pretty strict gun laws over there. Type.
They do have very strict gun laws.
Yeah, it's not
But
as
it
it is
goes
in
back to
China.
what's going on here in the U.S., where they're saying, "Oh, give the government all your guns."
Hmm.
Uh, I
Oh,
don't
give
think
up.
you want
Oh,
that to
stop,
happen.
stop, stop, stop. Well, look, man. History has shown like any country where, when it comes to the gun thing, I'm just gonna say right now, I think people should have their rights to their guns. Okay, because I'm from a country where the president has sent out the military to fire on people who were, you know, so I would never ever be a supporter of getting rid of guns. I would never ever be a supporter. I like, you know what I mean? All that stuff is just, yeah, there is more serious problems out there, but I think people need to be able to have their guns to protect themselves. That is just a basic right. It is what it is,
Yep,
and
yep,
people can feel how they want to feel about it. But
yep,
at the same time, man, I've kind of seen somewhat like what it's like when it's the other way. And I would hate to be in that position as well. So
yep.
that's, moving on. We also have Peru in here. You see, the country has declared a state of emergency, mobilize the military. What was I just saying right now?
Yep.
Your own government has sent the military to support the police,
Yep.
right? Uh, and issues several cities a curfew after nationwide protests against inflation, fuel prices, and the government spread for a week.
So now we've just jumped an entire continent. We went from Europe
Yeah.
to Africa to South America.
You know what this is? Imagine if you told your parents, like, hey, I'm really hungry. I would like you guys to give me some more food. And the response to that is to punch you in the face.
Yeah. Or put you on punishment.
How is this any different? And this is exactly why people are rebelling. So
Yep.
it's shocking to me that these people are supposed to be smart, but they cannot figure out these things. We go over to Italy. Italy's prime minister cancels the NATO summit. He left Madrid to be back in Italy. Power is dwindling. The people of Italy are rebelling and demanding the removal of the government. That is Italy, bro.
Again.
That's what is Italy? First world country? What do they call themselves
Yeah,
these days?
Italy is a first world country, not too far from Spain. And you know what happened with Spain that nobody talked about? All the
Mm,
African immigrants that were coming
yeah,
across to the border that
yeah.
got slaughtered. About 60 to 100 of them got slaughtered, like literally beat to death.
Wow.
Nobody talked about it. They just covered up. This happened in Spain.
Oh, I
Again,
guess
these
all
people are
that.
running away from high inflations, from poverty into
Yeah,
Spain, and
oppression and
boom, that
everything
happened. And then you
else.
have what's going on in Italy right now. The world is literally turning over right now. Nobody
Dude,
really knows what's going on.
it is happening right now, man. It is happening. So again, this is the same thing, right? Just confirming. We had to definitely find some other articles to just back up what is happening there.
Yep.
We see that the prime minister, he was in a summit. These guys love their summits, man. There's NATO summit, all sorts of summits. Just gather around in an AC room and talk about people's lives without involving them in their life. Insanity, right? And it's coming to an end here. We have huge protests in Albania demanding the government to resign. Food prices in
Here.
Albania increased by double digit percentage since a month ago.
Yep.
Inflation isn't transitory.
It never
Inflation isn't
was.
transitory. Yeah, look, man, inflation is not transitory, as we can clearly tell by now.
So
Go ahead.
tell me what continent that we get now that does not have inflationary drama caused by the central banks.
The inflation is everywhere. It's definitely everywhere at this point. It's a global problem. It's no longer something that is just within the United States. And this is some pretty serious stuff. I mean, people are out here taking on the issue, and I don't know. When do you think this will start happening in, say, places closer to us? I mean, we know Canada. Isn't this Canada has been seeing some protests as well, haven't they?
Yeah, that was the truck drivers. That was the demand and supply logistical
Yeah,
issue going on with that.
absolutely. That was the one there. Now,
I
and so
mean,
what is next?
I mean, America's still distracted with Roe versus Wade right now. You just gotta understand. We're not trying to bash the government. We just believe that the government there are better solutions that the
Yeah,
government can implement.
yeah,
But
yeah,
over time, it's just been, oh, Democrat versus Republican, Democrat versus Republican. But the entire time, the entire system is just rotting and rotting over time. And unfortunate thing is that these same parties are already been overrun by the
mm,
central or the bankers. It's a banking
yeah,
system now. And the bankers, they make money no matter what. Either you make money through fees or they make money through, you took a loan, right? Inflation, they don't give a care. They would
yeah,
just get a chance to make more money through the inflation. Banks don't get broke during inflation. They either go buy more in the dip. It's like, oh, I gave you more money. I want my money back. I will increase the interest rates.
yeah,
Now you got to pay me more back in interest rate. The stock market dips. Oh, I go buy it cheaper because now I have more money to buy it cheaper. They just
yeah.
control everything. And then
Absolutely.
in the meantime, the poor and the middle class are just suffering the entire time. You're just caught in the middle.
Look, man,
And
these things. This is the crazy thing. This is not the first time this has happened, right?
Rome
So
did the same thing, and you saw what happened in Rome.
yeah, exactly. So technically, you don't need to bash the government to see facts, okay? Because no matter what people feel about these situations, okay, facts are facts, and the reality is happening right now. We're just showing you countries after countries protesting, right? And we know that we're dealing with the same issues that these other countries are dealing with. Like, look at gas prices right now, dude. If most people were to start driving into work, most people were working from home. They had to start driving into work. Okay, they'll be driving. They'll be working just to buy gas. Okay, no,
Hey, hey,
forget
hey,
talking
hey,
about living
hey,
paycheck to
hey.
paycheck. You will not be living paycheck to paycheck. You will not be able to make it to work after a while.
There are two things I want to say about that.
Mm.
Gas prices dropped by like 40 cents, boom, out of nowhere. What
Mm.
caused the gas prices to drop that fast? No one is talking about that. Are they trying to prevent what's going on around the world from happening in the US?
Well, if gas
That
prices drop by 40 cents, it tells me that the rise in the gas price was not actually affected by what they said it was, because someone has done something to bring it back down. And if you can bring it back down by 40
that
cents,
quickly, that quickly
you
in
can
one
bring it back
week.
down by a lot, because no one
Exactly.
felt any negative effects from it going back down by 40 cents, right?
Exactly.
So it looks like they're
And
buying
then,
time. But yeah, go ahead.
exactly. And you have companies like my buddy, Ellen,
Yeah.
that is saying, oh, you better come back to work. Right?
Mm,
And companies that are firing the younger people, saying if you don't come back to work, forget about your job. And these young
yeah.
kids are like, oh yeah, okay, we're not gonna take the job.
Yeah.
They'll rather work from home.
Exactly.
So there's
And someone is
policies
going to
that
find
have
them.
been,
Someone is going to take them to work from home. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, there are policies been implemented that are counteracting or counterproductive.
Yeah. Counterproductive. Yeah.
Get less people on the road, allow the demand for oil to go down, right? So that the supply can catch up.
Mm.
But no one is
But
talking about that.
this is one thing I'll also say. If we were locked down for a year, right? Um, and which means driving was definitely lower, and people are not
Hmm.
driving to the office anymore, which means consumption should also be lower.
Hmm.
And then gas prices were able to hold stable for a long period of time, right?
It
At
should
least
have
a
gone down,
year
right? It should have
after
gone down even.
exactly, right? And this gas price, even after the economy reopened, right? Gas
Hmm.
prices maintained for, it was higher, but it definitely maintained for a period of time. It means that really, yeah, like you said, it should the demand for gas should have gone down. So I don't see how the prices would be going up
So
when
the
demand is not
argument is
on the same
the
level.
argument is that the argument was that there was a surge in demand that they weren't prepared for. For goodness sake, how do you say that you're going to reopen and you did not plan the demand? Are you like you basically woke up one day and you're like, boom, oh, demand for the COVID is over,
No,
and
well,
boom, you just
this is my question. This is my question. Say there was a surge for demand that they did not see when
yep.
the economy reopened, right?
You should
The,
have seen
the,
it. This is not the first event that this is not the first
well,
time this is happening.
but this is what I'm saying. Gas was still around $3 or less all the way
Yeah,
up until when the Russia situation happened,
yeah.
right? So what happened at that point? And this is just specific to the US, because outside of the US, I get it. Like other countries, like they're screwed. They were all dependent on Russia for gas, but the US was net exporter of gas.
Hmm.
You see what I'm saying? So I don't know. It just seems like there's a lot of intellectual dishonesty, and it is difficult to make a decision when people are not giving you accurate information. You see what I'm saying? And so,
There's something
as a
else to add
result
to
of
that.
that, was that
There's something else to add to that. We'll talk about honesty, this inaccurate information.
right?
There's something else to add to that. The same loud riots that we're seeing now was
Mm.
happening right before COVID.
This is true. This was happening before COVID.
COVID happened to shut
Mm.
everybody down. So what are the chances that COVID is going to happen again to try to slow things down?
Well, it sounds like that is the playbook. It would be very obvious if they try to lock people down. I mean, China has tried it and it's not working out. Which, by the way, I think like how much of China is underwater or was underwater for the past couple of weeks. You know what I mean?
That's something else nobody's talking about. And
You know what I'm talking about?
this is a major manufacturing areas.
Yeah. So,
I can't pronounce the names because
dude, wherever, man,
when we used to
it's
do Amazon.
look, man, it's if you pull up the chart, I mean, it's really something anyone can Google it, right? We do not add it to our presentation for this recording, but it's happening, and there's going to be consequences for that,
Yeah.
right? And it's going to be felt for a long, long, long time. And we know Apple is trying to move. Apple was avoiding questions about earnings at a recent conference. They never do that. So something is going to happen, and we already see some of it happening. It's very interesting. This is why I think that Bitcoin is very important because this everything we just explained has happened before. There's been civilizations that have risen and fallen, fiat currencies have risen and fallen, leaders have come and gone. But every time, what led to their failure was the same thing: money, right? And so, what is unique this time is we have Bitcoin. We have to give it a shot. I mean, it's like Trump would say, right? Why do you have to lose? We have to give it a shot because we already know what happens with fiat, right? And so it's interesting. What do you guys think? Do you guys think we're in this fourth turning situation? Are you familiar with the fourth turning? It's definitely something to look into. And do you think Bitcoin, or how do you think Bitcoin can help us,
Yeah.
move from this situation? Because that's something that's the only asset where people can maintain value and be able to transact with each other without anybody else determining the market for you. Final thoughts.
I will add that. My final thought would be just consider the fact that the central banks get to print money and remove or add money to the
Yeah.
economic system whenever they want. But in the case where you have a monetary system that is just mathematical, just let the mathematics do its thing. Let the algorithms do their thing. Let the cryptography do its thing. It's just that simple. Like, take the human factor, the human greed, or the human influence out of it. Let the mathematics do its thing, right? And then the regular rotational economic cycles occur,
Yeah.
right? Demand, supply. So with it takes time. We just got out of COVID. It's gonna take time for supply to catch up with demand, right? But government should have planned that to know that, okay, we're going to reopen in August. Let's make sure that we just don't reopen in one day and boom, the demand shoots up.
Yes.
So in a crypto environment like Bitcoin, it's so transparent. You can see the transaction. You can plan that. You can say, okay, we're gonna reopen. Here's the transactions. Yes, where the funds need to go. We know it's so transparent. We know that our government is prepared to reopen.
Well,
Those are the
look,
kind of solutions that
it is
blockchains provide for us, that Bitcoin will provide for us.
yeah, it's shocking how much is not being done, or maybe a lot is being done, but we don't know about it. But that's the thing, transparency. That's where people
Yeah.
can know what the plan is, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, it's interesting. We'll see what happens next. According to the U.S. Press Secretary, the economy is stronger than it's ever been in history. So, boom,
It's stronger for the super
and,
rich.
and employment numbers are rising. Unemployment is very low in the U.S. right now too. But at the same time, they're trying to get jobs to either reduce people's wages or cut down their workforce. Make of what you
Counter
will with that. Yeah, exactly.
counterproductive. The White House is saying that, oh yes, we got more job. The feds are
Yeah.
saying, no, we want to f you guys over because we need you guys to start laying people off.
Hey,
Really?
just drop the information out there and let the people choose, man. We can see the effects of this already. Ladies and gentlemen, this was a great one. Until next time. Brazen up.
Double O out.